Baltimore, a city of rich history and tradition. Baltimore City Hall, the seat of power for 45 men who have shaped this town of ours. Men who have been mayor. Men like Tommy D'Alessandro Jr., Harold Grady, Philip Goodman, Theodore McKeldin, and Tommy D'Alessandro III. Their portraits hang on the walls of the Board of Estimates room. And they've made room for two more, for the 44th mayor, William Donald Schaefer, and for a man named Dew.
My picture's going to hang one day in the Board of Estimates. And my grandchild and my great-grandchildren are going to be able to come and say, that's Granddaddy.
Good evening, I'm Sally Thorner, and I'm inside Dunbar Middle School in East Baltimore. This was the original Dunbar High, and it was right here that Baltimore Mayor Clarence Dew Burns was a locker room attendant. He made sure gym students got fresh uniforms. It was a job won through political connections, but it was still a humble beginning for a man that would become mayor of Baltimore, the first black mayor of Baltimore. In 2 months, Dew Burns will be leaving office after a short but proud stay. During the next half hour, we're going to take a look at Dew, the family man, Dew, the politician, and Dew, the mayor.
Mr. Mayor, did you ever think it would happen? I know I did.
The reality of being Baltimore's first black mayor actually began to set in a few days before the official swearing-in ceremony. Dew got a taste of it the day Dew's old friend and predecessor, William Donald Schaefer, was inaugurated governor in Annapolis. Even though it was Schaefer's day, Dew was getting his due from scores of well-wishers. But just days later, it would be Dew's moment alone, his shining moment at the War Memorial Building. Inauguration Day, he would now be Mayor Dew Burns.
I am and have been and will be many things to many good citizens. But today, I am the mayor. Thank you very much.
Ironically, a lot of political experts predicted Dew might have many shortcomings as mayor, but would be a crackerjack campaigner. But in fact, it would turn out to be the other way around. He got high marks for crafting a $1.7 billion city budget with no property tax increase. He also put together a plan to improve the troubled city library system and make city schools better. But while Dew made no mistake about exerting his control over the city, the question became who was in charge of his mayoral campaign. One campaign manager left after a loan squabble. Ray Haysbert left after apparent continuing conflicts with longtime Burns confidant Marie Henderson. And by the time the Reverend Wendell Phillips took over in the heat of the campaign summer, political analysts were saying it was too little, too late. The polls had been showing Burns a full 30 points behind challenger Kurt Schmoke, much too far behind to expect a comeback, no matter who was at the campaign controls. But Burns kept saying the polls were wrong.
I'll tell you one thing. I'll tell you this much. I won't give up. And you know one thing? I just might win it. Okay? Well, polls, I'm not going to address the polls anymore. They've said enough, and I still don't believe them.
The keys to his eventual comeback and near miss, the much-talked-about mayoral debate here on Channel 2 when Burns surprised everyone by going after Schmoke in no uncertain terms.
Mr. Schmoke, I think...
You'll have to conclude your thought now.
My thought is, Mr. Schmoke, I think you had better do your homework, because if you don't, you'll have this city floating down Chesapeake Bay.
When it was over, people were saying Burns had won. A subsequent Channel 2 poll and a later newspaper poll agreed. Burns had narrowed the gap to around 10 points. On election night, Burns took the early lead, and the Schmoke camp was in shock. It was clear that it would be a down-to-the-wire night. Only at around 11:30 p.m. did Schmoke finally pull ahead to win the race. For Dew, it was the end, but as Kurt Schmoke watched on TV, Dew went out with class and grace.
So I'm prepared tonight, because there's no question about it. When you looked at the count, and you looked at 3,600 absentee ballots, there's no reason for me to say I'm going to go any further. So I'm going to concede. Somewhere somebody coined the phrase, too. Great phrase, one that I use a lot. It's not whether you win or lose that counts, but how you played the game.
Now we're inside Dunbar High School, constructed in the early 70s to replace the building we just visited. Dew calls this school his monument because it's built on the site of his birthplace. Dew was one of 6 children in a poor East Baltimore family. He never achieved more than a high school education. Of course, he achieved much more than that in his 69 years. We've just taken a look at Dew the mayor. Now let's take a rare peek at the private side of Dew. Here's City Hall reporter Joyce Jefferson.
Make sure we get the right messages out, okay? Because for Kurt, we want a full house. We want the whole membership here.
This is the Dew Burns we're used to seeing. In charge, in command at a Sunday meeting of his old political club, the Eastside Democratic Organization. This is the Dew Burns we rarely see. It's later that same Sunday, and he's spending some time with his family at his daughter's home in East Baltimore. While Dew is a very public person, his family doesn't often like to share the spotlight, especially his wife, Edith. She's been by his side for a long time. They celebrate their 48th anniversary on November 5th.
According to the Constitution and laws of this state.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you, Father.
And though she disdains publicity, she's also been by his side when it counted most, like Inauguration Day when she held the Bible as he took the oath of office. His daughter, Cheryl Burns Turner, and his granddaughter, Lisa Turner, also share the moment. How does a man whose whole life has been in politics find time for a family life?
They are first. My wife, my daughter, my granddaughter, my dog are first.
When I was growing up, I didn't see my father that much during the day because, of course, I was at school. But when I came home from school, my mother worked at night, so my father was there for me. And I remember every day, no matter what the weather, no matter what he had to do, he would take us out for a ride to get frozen custard or something. And that was what I looked forward to. That was the highlight of my day.
Like my mother said, he was always very loving, very kind. And whenever if my mother or my grandmother wouldn't do something for me, I'd always run to them. And I'd usually get my way. At my senior prom, there was a gown that I had to have. Nobody wanted me to get it because they thought it was too expensive for just a one-night deal. So I went to him with my puppy dog eyes. I said, I gotta have it, I gotta have it. So I got it.
Lisa says her grandfather has been her constant guide.
With my education, that's always been the area he gave me the most advice in. Recently, we made an agreement that I would stay in school and get my master's because I'm going into education, and as a teacher, you have to have your master's to get a good start. So I'm going to stay in after I graduate, and he said he would fund it. So that's our little agreement. That's the pact we made.
Lisa has kept a scrapbook of her grandfather's accomplishments. She and her mother admire them, but neither is interested in following in his footsteps. Both find it hard to bear the criticism that he sometimes receives.
It was exceptionally hard to deal with because I felt like this was a personal attack on me, and I felt everything that he probably felt. It's just that I wasn't able to express it.
And the mayor says the criticism is one of the factors his wife dislikes about public life.
My wife hates it, and I knew that. So I kept much of it as far away from him as I possibly could. I wasn't going to mix them up into this kind of thing. In the first place, number one, I was never going to embarrass them. Because they mean something to me. They know they mean something to me. Everything I do is for their betterment.
Following Election Day, Cheryl decided it was time to let the public know her feelings about her father in a letter to the newspaper.
Every word I said was true. I meant every word of it.
Can you remember some of what you said?
Well, I said my father has always been there when I needed him. I said about the kind of person that he was and that he had never let me down. And those are the things that have always meant due to me.
Baltimore City Council chambers. Dew Burns first came here as an elected councilman in 1971, but his political career really dates back to the 1940s. What kind of a politician was he? What kind of a leader? We'll hear from his allies and enemies alike when we continue with Dew.